Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your Saturday and a great beginning to your weekend out there. Here to break down the obvious, which is a significant severe weather event expected to unfold for the central and southern plains. We're going to get very, very detailed in this video. So, if you got questions, hopefully they are answered in this video. That is my intentions with this because we're going to spend a lot of time on each individual area. We'll have a timestamp up for Oklahoma and Texas, one specifically for Kansas and southern Nebraska, and then one for Missouri, Illinois, and surrounding states also, as I do think the weather will get pretty bad tonight in those areas of the country also. But of course, the highlighted area is areas of Kansas, right through the heart of Oklahoma, and then northern sections of Texas. I actually think the severe risk is actually increasing for you folks. So we're going to break it all down. We're going to compare some model guidance, not only just show the HRRR model, we're going to show another model also, talk about the timing, the evolution of these storms, the fail modes, the boom modes, boom meaning this could end up being, the worst case scenario, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We're going to break it all down for you folks. I hope to answer any questions in this. Of course, I'm not going to be able to mention every single town and city name, but I hope to mention some of the well-known ones. And yeah, just hope to really relay this information for you folks in a way where you guys can understand. This is a very important video. The last thing I'll mention before we dive deep into this, I'm making this video just after 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 Central Time. So just note, I have what I have, the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. But on the day of a big-time severe weather event like this, information changes, especially the confidence level. It drops or it rises. In this case, I do think it'll rise. We're still waking up to a moderate risk, level 4 out of 5. But I do think there's a higher than not possibility we'll go to a high risk. It doesn't change anything. It just means the confidence for severe weather increases. But as far as storms forming, I think they will, and if you happen to be in an area where a storm is moving over, all hazards are possible. So just remember that. The only thing that'll change is the confidence level. So we're going to break it all down for you folks, and I'll probably reiterate that a couple more times in this video. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. And I'm certainly praying for everybody. I already have said, woke up really early this morning, said my prayers, and I got all you folks that are in the impact zone in my prayers for sure, and I'll continue to pray for you guys throughout the day, and I'm sure a lot of people will too. So let's get rocking and rolling. So what's going on right now? Well, not a whole lot in regards to severe weather. We do have a lot of shower and storm activity across Tennessee, Mississippi, even northern Alabama, even still in Arkansas. This energy will continue to move kind of eastward. We'll kind of probably, I would say weaken throughout the morning, and then more will probably fire up later this afternoon. We got a line, sort of a broken line of showers and storms kind of rumbling through lower Michigan. Looks like some rain's heading out of the UP of Michigan by the time some of you folks watch this. That'll probably be done with the rain. And then we got the energy coming out the Rockies, and this is basically with the development of the surface low, which will get a lot of moisture going on. And already in response, you do have moisture up here in southwestern Wyoming, moving into western sections of Nebraska. And with just troughing in place, we do have moisture with low pressure over areas of Nevada and northern Nevada and areas of Utah this morning, just scattered about here in the northern Rockies and the Pacific and Northwest. So that's what's going on right now. Even some rain here in the Carolinas. We check out the watches, warnings, and advisories. Guys, it's going to be very hot in South Texas today, kind of south of where all this storm activity is going to be. Heat indices will be well into the 100s. Some areas will push 120 degrees. Red flag warnings up for the entire state of New Mexico, areas of western Texas, and a couple other counties surrounding New Mexico. This means it's very dry. There's a fire danger. It's not being talked about much, but when you got a lot of energy that moves to the north of these areas, it brings a very dry southwesterly flow, and when it's dry, there's no moisture, obviously, and it's super dry. The dew points are very low, and there's just no moisture, and it's quite windy, so, of course, you have a fire risk with that. Flood watch is up for areas of the Mississippi River, east and west of it, in the Delta region, northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, and then sections of northeastern Arkansas. A couple counties in the Boot Heel of Missouri are added into this also. We look at the excessive rainfall outlook here in the yellow. That means there's at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. So, as far as flooding today, I don't think it'll be all that significant, as I don't think we'll get a training of storms. Some areas could get multiple rounds, but all in all, I would say the flooding threat isn't very significant today. That could change, but as of now, not a huge deal. Now, this is a huge deal. And once again, I will reiterate this once more and probably a couple more times. Just note, this has I would say a higher than not chance to upgrade to a high risk, level 5 out of 5. We've already seen one earlier this month. I think there's a solid chance we'll see it again in the next update or two from the Storm Prediction Center, which will drop in a couple hours from right of the time I'm making this video, okay? Right now, you have that moderate risk in the red, level 4 out of 5. Enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. These are confidence levels. And then in the yellow, that's a level 2 out of 5. And in the dark green, level 1 out of 5. That's a marginal risk. This marginal risk extends all the way across the deep south into the Carolinas, where I do think there'll be widely scattered showers and storms capable of reaching severe limits. And there's another area up here we'll watch for some severe weather also for sections of the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, up into the interior northeast. There will be a severe weather chance up there too. So I want to take the broad look at this first, because I am only going to really zoom in as far as towns and cities in Kansas and Oklahoma. But I do not want to leave my friends here in northern Texas hanging here. So the tornado threat, there's a 15% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. In areas of southern Kansas and Oklahoma, 10% risk down to Wichita Falls. And guys, I could see you guys upgrading in northern Texas to a 15% risk of a tornado. I really could. Okay. The wind threat, 45% chance of winds now exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in the pink area. All right. And the red, a 30% chance of that. And the yellow, a 15% chance of that. And then there's a hatch risk, also a 10% chance of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. The hail threat, in the pink, that's a 45% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And the red, a 30% chance of that. Yellow, 15% risk of that. Black outline region, including all the red and pink area, 10% risk of 2 inch in diameter or larger hail. Now, I know I zoomed through that pretty quick, but I'm about to really zoom in to a couple states to really help you guys get a good idea. Keep in mind, these outlooks could change. So let's go on and zoom into Oklahoma. Okay, I like I said, I think there's a chance this gets upgraded to a high risk, which would show up in the pink. But as of now, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, down to Norman, Lawton, a moderate risk, level 4 out of 5 of severe weather. Confidence levels a level 4 out of 5. Enhanced risk in the orange, that's a level 3 out of 5. And then the slights in the yellow, level 2 out of 5. Dark green, level 1, marginal risk. Okay, if they do, I'm gonna take a guess at each outlook, and we're just gonna take our time in this video. If they do make changes, which I think they will, they always do the day of a big severe weather event. I think they'll extend the moderate risk down in the North Texas, and I think they'll issue a high risk. I would say, let's say just north of Oklahoma City up to Stillwater, maybe as far south as just south of the Red River into northern Texas with some of the latest model guidance. And then there could be maybe some sort of secondary high, I wouldn't say a secondary, could be a high risk up into Kansas. I think they'll keep it a moderate risk for wind-driven and hail-driven activity in Kansas. But we'll see. Okay, what about the tornado outlook? This is what will change, guys. And I'm just taking my shot here. You guys know I like to do this. In the red area, 15% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location, folks. Like I said, I do think if they make any changes to this, that red area gets extended down into Texas. The yellow area, that's a 10% risk of a tornado. The brown, 5%, green, 2%. If they do upgrade this, this will warrant a 30% chance of a tornado. There's nothing in between 15 and 30 per the Storm Prediction Center. Though they go from 2 to 5 to 10 to 15 to 30, and I think the next is like 45, then 60, which we haven't seen in quite some time. Okay, so if they make changes, they'll bump it up to a 30% chance of a tornado. Heck, maybe eventually to a 45. I'm not sure. with that. My confidence is low on that, but my confidence is pretty high on them upgrading this to a 30% chance of a tornado somewhere. And I think that that would be somewhere into here, in my opinion. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Okay? So just note that this could change. This is what we're looking at as around, like I said, I'm making this video about 10 minutes before 6 a.m., 5:50 a.m. in Eastern time. Okay? Now, the wind outlook, I don't think this will change much. I really don't. Maybe some tweaks here and there. But there is, in the yellow, 15% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. In the red, there's a 30% chance of that. In the pink, there's a 45% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. This does include Bartlesville, Tulsa, you're in that 30%. But if you notice the black outline region here, that's a 10% chance, extended all the way into the 15% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60. 10% chance, not added on to these other risk areas. It's its own thing. 10% chance of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. Okay? And then the hail outlook. All right, this has tweaked since last night's video. In the red, 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. In the pink, which does include northern section of Oklahoma here, 45% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then this entire area, basically except a very small section of the yellow here on the east side, has a 10% chance of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Significant deal. Note, things will change. And guys, I do want to say this as we look at Kansas. I will post frequent updates even on the YouTube channel. In fact, I might make another video about midday, just before the storms get going, just to kind of give you guys some updated information. But just note, the fact that we're going to have widespread strong to severe storms doesn't change. Latest from Kansas. Okay. Moderate risk for Great Bend, Pratt, Hutchinson, Wichita, Emporia. What is that? Coffeyville. Cool name. I need some coffee because it's early. But level 4 out of 5 risk here. Okay. Enhanced risk level 3 out of 5 includes Dodge City, Manhattan, up to Topeka, Kansas City, and then just about into Joplin. You're right on the fringe of the moderate to enhanced risk here in Missouri. Slight risk level 2 out of 5 in the yellow. Kansas City, like I said, you're in that enhanced risk, higher populated region. This could change. Now, I have lower confidence we'll get another category upgrade up here, but it very well could happen. I think they'll keep this about the same. That's my take on Kansas. High-end severe weather event, I think there's a chance of tornadoes with anything that forms, but I would say they keep it at a moderate. I could be totally wrong. Could be totally wrong. You know, guys, I like to take my shot and try to guess what they're going to do based off what I know, with what Mitch knows. So down here, Kansas, 15% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. Pratt, Wichita, Coffeyville, you're including this just south of Hutchinson. Okay, in the yellow, there's a 10% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. Brown, 5%. Green, 2%. Dodge City, you're including in the 10%. Great Bend, Hutchinson, Emporia, just south of Kansas City, Pittsburgh, over here, and then into Joplin. And then you also have the black outline region, which includes pretty much all of the yellow area and the red area. Got a 10% risk of a strong tornado, EF2 or higher. And I think there'll be strong to violent tornadoes, especially in Oklahoma. All right, now this is where it gets really significant. Now, don't get me wrong, the tornado threat's significant too, but the hail and the wind is quite significant. This is the wind risk, the wind outlook. That pink area, that's a 45% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. All right, and then in the red area, a 30% chance of that. Yellow, 15% risk. A black outline region that you see with the black dashes going in between. If you live in that area, there's also, not added, but its own thing, a 10% risk of winds exceeding Category 1 force winds or higher. 75 mile per hour winds or higher, guys. Significant. Okay, and then we look at the hail outlook. All right, it's shifted a little bit further to the west. Pink area, 40, at least the highest risk of it. Pink area, 45% chance of hail, pretty much, exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Any storm that forms is likely going to produce hail in this setup, no doubt about it. Hutchinson, Salina, Wichita, Pratt, Great Bend, you guys are under the impact zone, the highest risk of hail. Red area, 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch. Kansas City, Emporia, Topeka, Manhattan, Hayes, Dodge City, and then the yellow area, of course, that's that 15% risk. Black outline region, including all the pink and red and portions of the yellow, 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger, which we will absolutely have today with some of these nasty hailstorms, which have the capability of producing tornadoes also. So let's dive deep into Oklahoma and northern Texas. Now I know Kansas is in this too, and we're going to talk about Arkansas a little bit also. Well, I'm just going to try my best not to mention Kansas in this. We're going to have our own separate timestamp for Kansas. So we're starting off this morning. Nothing really on the board. Nothing going on. I want you to watch the progression of this, and I'm going to try to reiterate this a few times. If you're confused about the time frame, this says 8 a.m., right? So back it up 1 hour. So this is 7 a.m. technically. This is set in Eastern time, and I can't change it to Central time on weatherbell.com. So this is 7 a.m. Nothing going on regardless. We take it to about lunchtime. This is lunch. This is noon. Everything's still fine. Get what you got to get done. And then we take it into about the afternoon. This is about 3 to 4 p.m. Nothing going on. 4 p.m. And then we get into 5 p.m. Now we're going to take a look at the HRRR model first. And then we're going to look at another model that I think maybe has a better idea. The HRRR model, and I'm going to tell you, these models are going to flip back and forth some. They don't do great in these kind of higher cap setups. Cap meaning an area of warm air law preventing widespread storm development. 5 p.m., you're starting to see some storm activity north of Abilene. And then you get into 6 p.m., all of a sudden, an eruption of storms. And if you tuned in from last night's video, you're thinking, well, this is a lot different than what I was seeing in central Oklahoma. You're exactly right in thinking that. In fact, let's just go to the latest run. And does it go all the way out? It does. Let's go to the latest run. What does it show? There's those storms again showing up. This is around 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. All right, so this is around 7 p.m. Central Time. You got the evolution of discrete to semi-discrete supercells developing right on top of Wichita Falls, northern Texas, into southwestern southern Oklahoma. Okay, yesterday the HRRR model was gung-ho about these forming right on top of Oklahoma City around this time. So there's two things I'm noticing that's a difference with the HRRR model. And some of the other model guides too. The storm initiation is starting a little bit earlier, and it's a little bit further southwest. That's kind of some new development, right? So I'm telling you, this is 7 p.m. If you live in southern Oklahoma, and listen, these could very well pop up here, okay? And even in southern Kansas. But if wherever these storms that's being depicted by the HRRR model do develop, all hazards on the table. Strong tornadoes, large hail, damaging winds. I'll say that many times. And listen, there's nothing out here in the environment that's going to prevent really these storms from just producing EF2 tornadoes or higher. And I'm not trying to freak anybody out, scare anybody. I try to talk in a very calm voice, but it's true. The environment is higher end. One of the highest end environments being, when you look at the sounding, it's just high end, guys. And this continues. We get to 8 p.m., then we get to 9 p.m. And this is as far out as this particular model run goes. And just widely scattered at this point, supercells throughout central Oklahoma. As far south as the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we got a supercell down here. And this will be capable. Anything that can develop in Texas is capable of producing. The low-level jet will be really amplifying as far south as Texas. So if something like this does happen just west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it does have the capability of producing all hazards, including tornadoes. But this takes us to about 9 p.m. Supercells running right through central Oklahoma, heading into eastern Oklahoma. Notice there's not a whole lot going on in southern Kansas. I need to hold true to not speaking on Kansas. Has its own time frame. Now we go back 2 runs to the long range because this will help us extend this a little bit further. Same kind of deal. I mean, look at this supercell just north of the Fort Worth area. Okay, but it doesn't show as much activity up near Tulsa or anything like that. I mean, you got one lone supercell around 11 p.m. We got cells forming in Kansas at this point. At this point, it's 11 p.m., so of course the sun is down. Can't see nothing. And, keep your eyes on Oklahoma and Texas here. We'll talk about Kansas here in a second. But that's it on the HRRR model. I mean, it forms disruptive, dangerous, life-threatening supercells right down here, almost all the way down to Abilene, up to Wichita Falls into southern Oklahoma. I mean, runs them very strong potential for long track tornadoes, but it doesn't get it to Oklahoma City and Tulsa on this particular run. But that might not be the case. Please note that. We could very well have supercells up into here. All right, so what about, and we're going to look at a different site here, Pivotal Weather, because Weather Bell does not show this model. This is what we call the RRFSA model. It's basically a NOAA product, a kind of experimental thing, but what we've noticed with this model run is it does well sometimes. So I'm going to show you this. I hate the NAM, guys. I know hate's a strong word, but I do not like the NAM at all. So that's why I hardly ever show it on my channel here. But I'm a team HRRR model and then some of the other models, but that's why I'm not showing that. But this is this model, right? So same thing. And the cool thing is it shows a better timestamp up here. And this is in Central Time. So 5 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. Once again, not a whole lot going on, but bang, 6 p.m. These storms are exploding right near Elk City, near Lawton, kind of between this area. You got a cell down here just west of Wichita Falls, okay? And these immediately grow into monster supercells. And this model does show a dangerous supercell from 7 to 8 p.m. going right towards Oklahoma City, one right down into Wichita Falls. This could very well be further north, right on top of Lawton. This is just model guidance. And guys, if something like this forms south of Oklahoma City or anything like this, you see how this is doing that hook, little tail end southern flank right here, same thing down here. These are likely producing long-lived, strong tornadoes if this is the way it evolves. And this model really does show a worst-case scenario and a scenario that's likely. Look at this supercell up here in southern Kansas too. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But that's what I think is going to happen, in my personal opinion. I think you'll have 2 to as much as 4 very dangerous supercells. A supercell is a rotating thunderstorm. And we keep this going, and I think that these will continue. I mean, look at this supercell down here in northern Texas near Sherman. This is still a supercell kind of drifting at this point southeast between Oklahoma City and McAllister. I think that's, McAllister. And then this continues. And we still, I mean, when they say in the discussion, long-track, long-lived tornadoes, this is a great example of it. These storms right here form at around, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight. I mean, this supercell is still going strong. I mean, so this is a dangerous setup if something like this, either one of the models form. Okay, all we can hope is the hope that, that this doesn't impact a highly populated region, but someone's going to get hit by one of these. And, the chances of it just not doing any damage if they form is low. And that's the unfortunate thing. So, we look at the ingredients. This is what we call the significant tornado parameter. This indicates, the higher the numbers you're about to see on your screen, the better the ingredients for tornadoes. But note, when you look at this, just because you see a significant tornado parameter of 100, if a storm doesn't form, then it's not going to tap into all the ingredients to support tornadoes. So you got to have storm development to actually tap into the ingredients. So, the significant tornado parameter is already spiking, late this afternoon. I mean, already spiking to well over a 10, 12, 13. But as we start to get into, tonight, this evening, the significant tornado parameter just goes bonkers. I mean, goes into the teens, the low 20s. And the reason it spikes is because the low-level jet ramps up and increases the low-level shear, directional shear for tornado development. The Cape levels are already high before that happens. But when your kinematics, which is your favorable winds in all levels of the atmosphere, increase, the significant tornado parameter just goes crazy and maxes out basically. So that's why you're seeing these highlighted colors. And it's true, the ingredients are in the atmosphere. It's just what develops. And somebody asked a pretty good question here on Facebook I read this morning. What's up with the splotches? Well, those are the storms forming. And as soon as a storm forms, it eats up all the ingredients in the atmosphere. It basically diminishes the CAPE, the storm fuel. And when it does that, it it exhausts that area of energy, and then it proceeds to move into another area where it eats up that area's energy, if that makes any sense. So significant tornado parameter is absolutely through the roof. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at the H-R model as far as the updraft velocity swath. Right. This is going to indicate rotation with these storms, stronger updrafts, very large hail. So the H-R model is only going to show. It's only going to show basically where there's going to be storms. So you're going to look at this and say, this isn't very impressive, Mitch. And here it is. And remember, this only goes out to 9 to 10 p.m. So you would say, hey, not very impressive. Doesn't look like much of anything. I want you to note, this is the only area that shows storm development on the H-R model, the latest long range. Okay? So it's only going to show a highlighted area of color where there's storms. Now you go back and you look, and unfortunately it won't let me go back, but if you look at the OOZH-R model, it had an eruption of supercells from northern Texas into central Oklahoma, and it looked a lot more alarming. But once again, right, we go and look at that other model, the RRFS model, right, and where it forms those storms, look at these. This is two distinct long-lived supercells. One here in the southern half of Oklahoma, one sort of riding the Red River, and more so in northern Texas. Wherever those 1 to 3 supercells form, and it could be more than that, guys. I'm just taking a guess here. Wherever those supercells do form, I mean all hazards, including violent tornadoes. If there's going to be a day where we're going to get the infamous EF5 tornado that we have not seen in quite some time, the environment supports it today. It does. So 2 distinct supercells on this indicating strong rotation, strong rotating, strong updrafts. Okay, so that's it with Oklahoma. Let's look at Kansas and southern Nebraska. So once again, we'll look at the H-R model. All right, and I mean, at this point, we're all the way to 7 p.m. already. Not a whole lot going on, right? I mean, we take it all the way to 10 p.m. Not a whole lot going on. You got a storm going on in southern Nebraska that has a chance to produce some strong winds and, I mean, all hazards. And then, bang, 11 p.m., destructive potentially storms develop in central Kansas. All hazards immediately. Tornado threat probably drops a little bit as we get into southern sections of Nebraska, but it's still there. And then we get into about midnight, and it shows nasty clusters of storms here in Kansas. They could be a little bit further south. They could be back here in Dodge City. I think regardless, most of eastern Kansas is going to get impacted. Look at this nasty cluster of storms capable of producing very strong winds and wind-driven hail about to move through Lincoln and then Omaha. And then look how these storms kind of cluster up almost in southeastern Kansas, southeastern Nebraska, northeastern Kansas. And I really think the wind threat with this will be the most significant, and hail. Hail will be huge too, especially with anything that forms back here. But the wind threat with these, because of the low-level jet really amplifying to this region, will be something serious, folks. So especially if we do get like kind of a Boeing structure of storms. Tupelo, right? Not Tupelo. We're not in Mississippi, Mitch. Topeka, right into here. And then you look in these areas here. I mean, these are some nasty storms. So just note, if you live in this region right here, I mean, just a heightened wind threat with embedded tornadoes. And Kansas City, higher populated region, when will y'all get hit? I think it'll be anywhere from, it could be anywhere from midnight to just a couple hours after midnight, to the wee hours in the morning. But embedded tornado threat with this, something, a very serious damaging wind threat. And then all these clusters of storms head off into Missouri, southwestern, Iowa. And this area of storms could drift all the way down into extreme northeastern Oklahoma. Very possible of that. But anybody on the southern flank of this is, guys, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. Will have a capability of producing all hazards. Okay? And then this heads on off, and we get a much better day for tomorrow. Once again, we'll jump and look at the RRFS model. Okay? And we'll look how this could evolve, and it's different. right? Dodge City here, Hutchinson, Wichita. Immediately around 7 p.m. Central Time, storm develops, and this looks like a supercell right off the dot. See how it has that little hook right in here? If something like this was to happen, you'll have a chance at a tornado, potentially strong to violent, riding right through here in southern Kansas. No doubt about it. And this continues, tries to get close to Wichita. If something like this happens, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and this is another long track supercell. And eventually it kind of clusters up, starts to impact areas of southeastern Kansas. So once again, at 7 p.m. storm forms. There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got basically a 4 to 5 hour long supercell that cruises across southern Kansas, capable of producing a violent tornado. That's just the case. I mean, I'm not trying to hype anything up. That is how serious this atmosphere is. What happens after that? What about the HRRR model with all these clusters of storms up here? Well, it does develop them eventually. The evolution is much different than the HRRR model, but in general, just know up here, it's lying to Manhattan, down to over the Topeka, over to Kansas City, St. Joseph, Beatrice here in Nebraska, or maybe y'all pronounce that different. Clusters of storms capable of producing all hazards. And once again, you look at that significant tornado parameter. Remember, the higher the number, the better the ingredients for tornadoes in the atmosphere. Just because you see a maxed out area of a 20 doesn't mean you're going to get a tornado. Just note that you can have all the ingredients in the world for the most high-end scenario, but if you do not get a storm that develops and taps into these ingredients, then you're not going to, and nothing's going to happen. So once again, just like we showed for Oklahoma, significant tornado parameter spikes and basically maxes out the color table on weather models. On Weather Bell. Okay, I mean down here, Dodge City to Wichita, everybody in between. I mean, you get into the teens, maxes it out here into the white color. I mean, and the ingredients are just high end for tornadoes in this area. And so anything that can tap into this environment right into here, anything that forms, you see these weird little clusters here, that's where the HRRR model is saying that the storms are going to form. So that's why I'm worried about any kind of storm. See how it goes from 10 to 15 to 20 here in this region to nothing here? That is because there's a storm right into here, groups of storms eating up the atmosphere, eating up all the ingredients, kind of like Pac-Man, right? Just munching off all the fuel in the atmosphere. So this continues, and then finally it drops off as we get into daybreak tomorrow. Updraft velocity swath, this is just from the HRRR model, where it shows storms. Rotation, no doubt about it, because you're going to have such a juiced up, low-level jet right over this area. So strong updrafts, rotating storms, no doubt about it here in Kansas, central to eastern Kansas, even into Nebraska. There's highlighted colors here. These colors are indicating rotating updrafts, strong updrafts. And then you look at that other model, the RRFS model. It does indicate that long track supercell in southern Kansas. Okay, this would support that 15% risk of a tornado threat into here. This would also support if the Storm Prediction Center bumps this up to a 30% chance. But it shows some highlight areas up here too. And then the wind threat is something serious. There's a chance with any of these clusters of storms up here, and this is just one run of the HRRR model. Now these storms will be capable of producing hurricane force winds. 75 to 85 mile per hour wind gusts are possible, especially, like I said, if these storms can cluster up, turn into like a Boeing line of storms here in eastern Kansas. I mean, even look at this. I mean, up here in southeastern Nebraska, that's where my biggest concern is. Even up here in the southwestern Iowa. So, got to watch out for that. And then not to leave my friends hanging here in the Midwest, Missouri, Illinois, surrounding states. I think most of the day is going to be quiet. Enjoy your outdoor activities. Don't freak out if you're in Missouri, even western Missouri. I think your daytime hours will be fine. In fact, I'm going to start this off at like 10 p.m. tonight. It's going to be a fine day, okay? But it's just as we get into the overnight hours, this is when you need to have your alerts on, whether it's on your phone, your radio, whatever it may be. We get into 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. Storms are inching close to Kansas City. All right, storms are blasting through southern Iowa. Another line of storms I'm sure you guys are having a hard time cleaning up from all these just storms that continue to sweep through this region. In fact, I could see the severe weather threat actually increasing for southern Iowa. But look at this line of storms moving into western Missouri, capable of producing very strong winds, even a tornado threat and large hail. And the confidence for severe weather does drop off once you get a little bit further east in Missouri. But I do think, and this is around 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning, okay, not like this afternoon or this evening. This is tomorrow morning, 5, 6 a.m., like around this time tomorrow morning. This is that line of storms moving through areas of eastern Kansas and then central Missouri, and clusters of storms as far north as eastern Iowa, western Illinois, and then we'll stop it here. It's around 7 a.m., and this is when we enter Sunday, day 2, and we have to watch this line of storms. I think central Missouri will be dealing with a very intense line of storms tomorrow morning around this time, and it'll be knocking on the doorstep of like St. Louis, already rumbling through Columbia, and then getting very close to the Springfield area. So yes, the updraft velocity swath really does indicate a significant area of strong updrafts with this line of storms. I mean, this takes us all the way to about 8 a.m. tomorrow morning Central Time. And you see the highlighted colors where it does show this bowing line of storms into central Missouri. That's why things could get pretty serious after midnight in Missouri. I think, Illinois, I think you could get some nasty storms probably tomorrow, just in general. I would say right after the sun comes up or right before it comes up in Illinois will be the biggest threat. But you can't rule out a tornado in southern Iowa either. But the southern flank of these storms into the wee hours of the morning in central Missouri will be something to watch out for, no doubt about it. And then the winds will be too. Along this line of storms, see how you get the highlighted colors showing up? This takes it all the way to about 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. You're going to get damaging wind gusts along this line of storms. I know how it shows like little clusters here, here, here. This is just a 1 hour period, so that's why it's showing some weird gaps. 1 hour it's here, 1 hour it's here. It doesn't show the colors in between. So, like I said, anywhere from southern Iowa, northern Missouri, central Missouri, and eventually getting into southern Missouri tomorrow morning, all the way into St. Louis, western Illinois, damaging wind gusts are likely, large hail too. So, kind of the last thing we'll look at to wrap up the severe weather side of this, right, is the ingredients. The one thing, as much as I love the Gates triple R model, it doesn't do the best job with dew points. But in general, I still look at it. Today, around 1 p.m., this is what dew points are showing. You're getting a nose of favorable low-level moisture into southeastern Kansas. But, I mean, you're starting off pretty dry for a big-time severe weather day. Dew points are, like, pretty, I would say it just feels crisp outside. Down here, dew points will already be rising into the 60s and 70s. In fact, it's already very moist in Texas. So watch how this entire area of dew points in the 60s and 70s, which if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's like, Mitch, man, you're still talking about dew points. I have no idea what you're talking about. Dew points is a thermodynamic, okay? And thermodynamics, then you got kinematics. Where's your best overlapping of both? That's where you'll have your highest confidence for significant severe weather. So thermodynamics is moisture at the surface, your dew points. How humid is it? How humid is it outside? That's a fantastic way to think of it. Okay, if you walk outside and like, wow, it just feels awful and tropical outside, you probably get a lot of juice in the atmosphere. Your dew points are probably in the 60s and 70s. Next thing is surface heating. How high is your actual surface temperature? Is it 80 degrees, 75, whatever it may be? What is your lapse rates like? How much dramatic cooling do you have the further up you get into the atmosphere, and a short amount of, I guess you would say, area in the atmosphere? If your temperatures kind of drop off quick and your dry air drops off quick, you have favorable lapse rates. This helps to have storms a little bit more discrete nature to them when you have favorable lapse rates. And then your CAPE levels is huge. How high are your CAPE levels? Thermodynamic wise, we have pretty much a maxed out environment for the most part. Not as favorable surface moisture up in Nebraska, northern Kansas, but down into Oklahoma, dew points into the 70s. This is when you typically get outbreaks of tornadoes. Okay, dew points in the 60s into eastern Kansas. A lot of moisture building into this region, no doubt about it. Dew points in the 70s creep all the way into southeastern Kansas as we're getting into the overnight hours. So check that off the box. Next thing you look at is your CAPE levels in response to those higher dew points. And we'll just take it all the way to the most favorable time here and Cape levels rise to over 4,500 to probably what's going to be 5,000 joules per kilogram, and central and west central and southwestern Oklahoma, and certainly in Texas, just jet fuel basically for these storms to feed into. I mean, even 1,000 joules per kilogram is a lot of Cape, guys. I mean, so you're getting into 2, 3, 4, 5,000 joules per kilogram in Cape. Tons of energy for these storms to tap into. Just tons. I mean, look at this area right here near Dodge City. I mean, you're getting close to 5,000 here near Woodward. Pretty wild stuff. Tons of energy in the atmosphere. This builds all the way into Missouri too, where these storms will fire off and then basically Pac-Man all the energy, eats up all the energy in the atmosphere. And so tons of energy. I think the wild card with this, which isn't a wild card, it typically is a wild card in severe weather setups, is how is your low-level jet? Well, you get all the way into this afternoon, it's not that potent. I mean, your low-level jet winds at 850 millibars, which equates to about 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air, about a mile above our heads of where we're standing, right? Your low-level jet is increasing in response to a deepening surface low right up here in the high plains. Okay, so you'll notice, what you're going to notice is a lot of highlighted colors showing up, purples and even reds eventually in Oklahoma and northern Texas and Kansas, eventually into Missouri and Arkansas. So watch what happens. We take it into about late afternoon, evening, and then watch how this low-level jet explodes here. So now, up here, 40, 45 knot low-level jet down here in Oklahoma, 50 to 55 knot low-level jet. And basically what this is pumping out winds in the low levels of the atmosphere right out the south at about 60 to 65 miles per hour. This is underlapping a mid-level jet coming out the southwest. So what happens, you get basically two different directions of winds kind of bumping up against one another. So this basically creates a spin in the atmosphere, directional shear. You got low-level shear. Just low-level kinematics are favorable for tornadoes. I mean, this is riding over a highly favorable thermodynamic atmospheres, with what we just discussed. Okay, this even increases to 50 to 55 knots and increases even more so to 60 to 70 knots. And guys, this will fuel that damaging wind threat into Missouri overnight, even into areas of eastern Kansas. So maxed out, I wouldn't say maxed out, but you have a very favorable low-level jet. Not too strong and definitely not weak. And when I say not too strong, sometimes you can have too strong of a low-level jet, and this basically forces these storms to just go immediately linear, which is a good, and it could be a good thing and a bad thing. You increase your damaging wind threat, you decrease your tornado threat. Either way, you have a massive severe weather threat. So, that's the risk breakdown for today. Let's talk about the rest of the country. I don't want to ignore everybody else. The Southeast, we'll just only take a wide look at this. What we do know is from Kentucky, Tennessee, the Deep South, the Southeast, the Carolinas, pulse storms in Florida. Everybody in this area, because you have a lot of surface heating, a lot of fuel in the atmosphere, has a risk of a strong to severe storm. You'll probably look at your weather app. It says you have your area says it might have a 20% chance of storms. Might say you have a 40 to 50. And I think that sounds about right. So just, it's a good day to have a reliable radar on your phone. We're probably going to get sort of pulse storms in these areas. The further west you get, maybe the chance of more of a cluster of storms. But we could get these clusters of storms. This is going to be kind of a summer-type pattern, outflow boundary-driven. A storm will form, pop off an area of rain-cooled air, what we call an outflow boundary. That boundary, because it's cool air, will hit the very warm air of an area that has not been kind of tapped into. That cool air hitting the warm air will fire up more storms. We saw that yesterday in my state in South Carolina. This will be another day like that. Just clusters of storms in Georgia. I mean, eastern South Carolina. You got storms in Alabama and Mississippi. Just could happen anywhere, guys. And then, with the loss of daytime heating, you kind of lose the storms. Northeast, more organized clusters of storms possible as energy flies from the north in Quebec and Ontario. So, this is around 2 to 3 p.m. Storms rumbling through northwest PA, western New York State. They'll probably cruise right through the Finger Lakes region this afternoon. Clusters of storms throughout Pennsylvania down here, rumbling through central New York State and along the PA-NY border here. Eventually, they might cruise into like the Poconos or the Catskills this evening. Some storms are possible in northern West Virginia, and I think this will pretty much diminish as just some rainfall into the eastern sections of the northeast of New England as we make our way deeper into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning. So just be alert. Small hail, gusty winds, isolated tornado with this. South Central U.S., we've already broke this down, but of course we'll take that broad look. Outbreak of supercells likely for someone. Surface low flying on top. Dangerous weather in the South Central U.S. Everybody else, some showers, higher elevation snow showers in Colorado. I don't think you're going to get much storm development here in southern Texas. Temperatures will be brutally hot in southern Texas. Be aware of that. I think you already are because of how hot it's already been. And of course, we got to watch the downstream effects of these storms from Kansas to Missouri overnight. North Central U.S., rainfall will clear out in the Great Lakes region. End up probably be a pretty nice day. Maybe a little cooler, maybe. We get into the afternoon, some showers. Maybe a thunderstorm could get going in central Minnesota. Some storms are possible also on the northern side of this low in Nebraska and even South Dakota. I think they will lack thermodynamics for sure because you're on the north side of the low. Scattered showers this evening across Nebraska, anywhere from eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, all the way up to northern Wisconsin, the western UP of Michigan. And then we're going to get into the overnight hours where a cluster of storms could basically impact the entire state of Iowa. And then eventually these storms, as we're getting into daybreak tomorrow, will make it all the way into southwestern Wisconsin. Severe limits is possible. I don't think this is anything too crazy, though, so that's the good news. Western U.S., you haven't got a lot of love from me lately. Just not a lot going on. But I will mention, because of the response of this surface low, showers, maybe even a storm or two, possible in northern Utah, getting into southwestern Wyoming. Clusters of rain, maybe even some storm activity in southern Montana. Just some energy because of the response of this lower pressure and this surface low riding across the central and northern Rockies. Clusters of storms are possible in central to eastern Montana. In the immediate west coast, southwestern U.S. quiet. Some showers are possible to move in overnight into northwestern Washington. And then it could set up for a pretty rainy start for your Sunday morning up near Seattle, the Olympic Mountains, and all those things like that. Temperatures, 60s, 70s in the northeast. The further southwest you get, the more you get into the 80s, and then you get downright warm once you get into the Baltimore, D.C. area. Philadelphia, southeast, very hot, soupy, humid-like weather today where you'll have a heat index probably approaching the mid to upper 90s, maybe 100, certainly 100 in Florida. Nasty, tropical hot air in Florida for sure. I think I saw a 7-day forecast for Orlando, and man, it looked brutal. Hot temperatures across the deep south. Nice pool weather. Just be aware of those storms. And, of course, it's heating up in the southern plains as the storms are about to get going. And then you look up here in the Great Lakes region. Definitely cooler temperatures, hanging on a cooler area. It did end up snowing in North Dakota yesterday, guys. And it was snowing hard, too. So pretty wild stuff how that happens. But temperatures in Oklahoma, 80s and 90s ahead of those storms. Widespread upper 90s and 100s across Texas. And then cooler air across the western U.S. Even a little bit cooler in the southwest. Not as warm as it's been with the influence of lower pressure. And I know I'm going to leave you guys hanging a little bit for tomorrow's severe weather threat, but just going to save this for the next video, which will most likely be this evening. But enhanced risk up, level 3 out of 5, still maintains itself for eastern Missouri, the southern half of Illinois, the southern half, including Indianapolis, with the Indy 500 of Indiana, all of central and western areas of Kentucky, and then the northern counties of Tennessee. Slight risk from northeast Texas, up to Chicago, back to Kansas City, all the way over to the eastern hills of Kentucky and Tennessee. And yeah, a big threat for tomorrow. Not as big as today, I don't think. Just a 5% risk of a tornado right now within 25 miles in a given location. The wind threat will be significant, though, in the entire red area. A 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour with a hatch risk inside of it. A 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. This includes, St. Louis. It includes down to Louisville, Bowling Green, Evansville, all these areas right into here. Hail threat, just a 15% risk. I think by far tomorrow, the wind threat will be the most significant. No doubt about it. I think we're going to have a couple clusters of storms capable of producing embedded tornadoes and a severe wind threat. And then we're in day 3 now. They do have the slight risk. This is for Memorial Day from Charlotte up to the Delmarva, all the way up to just south of Philadelphia. And we'll see what they do with this. I think we're going to have a 5% risk of a tornado, a risk of damaging winds with this. Marginal risk, though, it's still extending all the way from Texas up to Lake Ontario. So widespread area has a risk of severe weather for Monday, just as not as high end as the next couple of days. That's all I got, guys. I hope that was helpful. God bless all y'all. Stay safe out there. And I might have another video in a few hours. Very, very short video if we upgrade to a high risk, which I think we will. God bless all y'all. Be safe. And I'll talk to you again soon.